They didn't notice it at first. The dead were everywhere, stumbling through the streets with those vacant, lifeless eyes. Survival, in those first few days, was simple: run, hide, don't get touched. Everything we knew had vanished in a heartbeat. But then, on the third day, something changed. My sister Emma and I were trapped in a collapsed building. A group of the dead shuffled towards us. I braced myself, ready to fight for both of us, when I saw something impossible. They weren't moving toward Emma. Just moments before, they'd swarmed strangers without a second thought. But now, they're pale. Hollow faces seemed to soften as they saw her, Emma. I called out, my voice shaking with disbelief. She looked at me, her eyes a mix of fear and confusion. The closest one hesitated, its arms lifted as if to attack, but then it just froze, its gaze fixed on her like it had hit an invisible wall. In that moment, I understood. For some reason, the dead sensed something in her that they didn't see in anyone else. It was the first time I grasped the rule that would define the rest of our lives. The dead only remembered love. They would hunt those they had never known, but they would protect the ones they once loved. From that day on, I watched in a mixture of awe and terror as Emma walked through ruined streets, completely untouched, while the living scrambled in panic all around her. We weren't the only ones who noticed. Other survivors began testing the rule, cautiously leading people who lost family or friends towards the shambling hordes. With wide eyes, they watched as some were spared and others were not. Each time the dead protected someone, it was clear it wasn't because that person was crying for help or making a scene. It was because a bond had existed in life, a connection of shared laughter, of care, of tenderness that lingered even beyond death. I felt this strange mix of bittersweet relief and absolute terror. Being remembered meant safety, but being forgotten, being a stranger, meant you were a target. As the weeks passed, communities started to reorganize around this new reality. They centered themselves around those who had loving relationships with the dead, creating protected zones where these anchors could live among their undead guardians. The streets of our cities became these bizarre patchworks of safe havens surrounded by unpredictable, hunting hordes. Emma and I traveled cautiously between these zones. We watched how the dead moved with an instinctual precision, targeting anyone outside the circle of remembered love. This new world forced us to think about who we loved, who had loved us, and how a memory could survive in a body that no longer breathed. I remembered the early days, losing our parents, seeing strangers fall all around me while the dead simply ignored me and Emma. Now, the rule offered a strange kind of clarity. Love dictated survival more than walls, weapons, or strategy ever could. Society had always valued connection, but it was an abstract idea. Now, it was quantified by instinct, by this unspoken law of protection and hunting. The dead had become both judge and guardian, enforcing the bonds of affection with a silent, unwavering authority. Emma, moving quietly by my side, would occasionally just raise a hand, blocking a potential threat from reaching me, showing me the tangible power of remembered love. I started to record everything. I cataloged every incident, noting how the dead responded, which bonds triggered protection, and how long that protection seemed to last, because even instinct has its limits, and I feared that even memory could fade. The longer we survived, the more people learned to communicate silently with their undead allies, to walk with respect, to understand the invisible threads that connected them to beings that were neither alive nor fully gone. Love had become a resource as vital as food or water. It determined who could move safely through the world and who couldn't. Parents clung to their children with a renewed intensity. Siblings who had been distant for years rediscovered each other. Lovers reunited, creating these fleeting moments of joy amid the constant struggle. But there was also a danger in this dependence. Some people tried to manipulate it, to fake affection or force bonds just to gain protection. I saw it happen, but I also saw it fail. The dead weren't fooled by deception. Subtle gestures, shared memories, genuine care, that's what created the shield. Pretense got you nowhere. Our world became a place where ethics and survival collided in the most intimate way imaginable. The dead enforced connections without judging intent. They only remembered the feeling. The more Emma and I observed, the more we realized that the dead hadn't lost all their humanity. Their instinct was a form of morality, a raw measure of attachment that survived even when conscious thought decayed. We traveled cautiously, watching how groups of anchors moved through danger, each protected by those who had once held them dear. And we saw how the unanchored, the forgotten, were constantly at risk, forced to find allies or create new bonds, fast, just to survive. It's ironic, isn't it? Death created a clearer measure of care than life ever had. Here, the depth of your attachments had tangible, life or death consequences. A zombie just could not cross the invisible boundary created by remembered love. Every day brought new lessons about who mattered, who was remembered, and how fragile those bonds could be. Because memory can fade, and affection can be lost if it wasn't nurtured in life. The dead, in their imperfect but precise way, were reminding us all of the importance of genuine care. I saw parents who had lost their children step into danger to protect others, only to be defended by the memory of their own lost child. I saw siblings who had been distant find protection in their shared history. Friends who had never confessed their feelings now realized the power of their quiet loyalty. Every single interaction reinforced the strange new rule: love was survival. It was a world reshaped by memory. Walls and barricades could only do so much, but a bond of love could extend protection far beyond the reach of any human technology. I began to teach others what I had learned, guiding travelers through the ruins, helping them find their own anchors, showing them that being remembered was the key. Over time, survivors became adept at reading the signals, learning which of the dead were tied to whom, which gestures meant recognition, which signs of protection meant safe passage. It became a delicate dance, moving between these instinctual guardians and the dangerous, forgotten strangers among them. I even noticed that small acts of kindness could forge new bonds. Subtle gestures of care, shown to someone who was still living, could sometimes echo in the memory of their deceased loved one and move that undead guardian to protect you, a stranger. It was both miraculous and terrifying. We learned to weigh affection with the same gravity as we did supplies or shelter. Communities formed around anchors, designing settlements where the dead stood as silent sentinels. Their presence was both a comfort and a haunting reminder that love could save you, but neglect could destroy you. I often walked among them, observing Emma's protective stance, how she defended me instinctively, attacking threats she couldn't possibly understand but recognized as hostile. And I thought about what it means to love someone when they aren't fully themselves anymore. When protection comes from memory alone, when affection truly transcends mortality. I wrote it all down. The patterns, the rules, the exceptions. Knowledge became survival. Love became data. Memory became armor. The dead had taught humanity something that life never could, that care and attachment are the strongest forces in a world stripped of its rules. But there was still so much grief. Some people were forgotten, unloved, or estranged. The dead attacked them without hesitation. I watched parents mourn children who couldn't be their anchors. Lovers mourn partners they had lost in life and now again in death. Communities fractured along these lines of remembered affection. In this apocalypse, the most valuable skill wasn't strength or aim, but emotional intelligence. The ability to nurture genuine love, to sustain connections, to understand the hearts of others. Every day, I saw how fragile and powerful these invisible threads were, how a single act of care could save a life, and how indifference could doom one. Love literally carried the weight of survival, and Emma remained by my side, moving with instinct. Her presence a constant reminder that memory and care endure even when all else is gone. The world, though broken, had gained a rule that was both cruel and precise. It rewarded affection and punished neglect. Every choice mattered. Every moment of care left an echo. Every lost opportunity left a void. And as I walked through the ruins, I whispered reminders to others: reach out, show kindness, love while you still can. Because the dead are listening, watching, and remembering. And only through genuine love can any of us hope to survive. The cities of the living began to map themselves not by walls or weapons, but by bonds. They created paths of protection, sanctuaries built on networks of care. I marveled at this strange new ecosystem, at the way instinct enforced morality, at the way love had become the strongest law. I saw children growing up among anchors, learning early the power of affection, that protection is tied to the heart, that memory matters more than strength, and that kindness can create safety. And through it all, Emma moved silently, fiercely, lovingly, guarding me and others, showing us the paradox of affection, of loss, and of memory. The dead had not lost everything. Even in their empty gaze and slow, shuffling steps, they carried the capacity for the most human of acts, protection born purely of love. As I write the chronicles of this new world, of every bond, every rescue, every instinctual act of care, I know that though humanity was broken, love remained. And in a world ruled by the memory of the dead, being loved is life itself. Thanks for watching. If you want to hear more stories from this world, make sure to subscribe.